So, what's the real difference between ETL and ELT? You hear these terms thrown around all the time. Why do modern data teams seem to love one over the other? And are there times when the old school method is actually still the winner? Well, today we're going to break down this whole data debate in simple terms with some real world examples you can actually picture.
All right, here's the game plan. We're going to walk through 5 key sections, starting with the absolute basics. Then, we'll get into how to actually choose the right one for you. By the end of this, you'll totally get why this isn't just a tiny detail. It's at the heart of modern data engineering.
Okay, let's dive right in. First things first, we gotta understand what these letters even mean and why just swapping one of them around changes absolutely everything. At their core, ETL and ELT are just two ways of getting data from point A to point B so you can analyze it. But the one thing that makes all the difference, the secret sauce, is the order you do things in. First up, we've got ETL. That stands for Extract, Transform, Load. Now, this is the classic, the OG, born way back in the 1970s. With this method, you pull your data, you clean it all up and get it into a nice, neat structure on a totally separate server, and only then do you load that finished, polished data into your warehouse. And then we have the modern challenger, ELT, which is Extract, Load, Transform. With ELT, you flip the script. You extract the raw data, messy, unstructured, all of it, and you load it straight into a big, powerful cloud data warehouse. All the transformation, all the cleaning and organizing, that happens later, right inside the warehouse itself. So you can see it right there. It's just a simple swap. ETL does the transformation in the middle before the data gets to its final destination. ELT loads all the raw ingredients first and does the prep work, the transformation, right there in the kitchen. It seems like a tiny change, but believe me, swapping those last two steps has huge implications for how fast you can work, how flexible you are, and yeah, how much you spend. Okay, theory is great, but let's make this real. Imagine you're a retail company, right? Let's look at how you'd handle your daily sales data, first using the old school way and then the new way. So in the classic ETL world, everything happens overnight. At 1 a.m., a job kicks off and pulls all the data from the sales and customer databases. Then that data gets shipped off to a dedicated ETL server. This server's whole job is to transform it, joining tables, fixing errors, adding up the daily sales. Finally, maybe around 4 a.m., these perfectly clean tables are loaded into the warehouse, ready for the analysts when they log on in the morning. Okay, now let's hit rewind and see this with ELT. Here, the company uses a tool to just copy the raw sales and customer tables and dumps them straight into a cloud warehouse like Snowflake or BigQuery. The data's still messy, mind you, but now the magic, the transformation, happens right inside the warehouse. The engineers just run SQL queries to clean, join, and shape that raw data into perfect tables for analytics. The powerful warehouse does all the heavy lifting. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why did this big shift even happen? I mean, ETL worked for decades. The answer is simple, and it's a huge one. The cloud. The cloud came along and completely changed the rules of the game. If you look back, ETL wasn't just a choice. It was basically a requirement. Back in the 70s and 90s, the data warehouses people had in their own buildings, well, they had limited, very expensive processing power. You couldn't afford to waste it doing big transformations. But then in the 2000s, the cloud just exploded onto the scene. And suddenly, we had access to basically infinite, scalable power. These modern cloud warehouses, like Snowflake and BigQuery, were built for this new world. They separate storage from compute. What does that mean? It means you can store massive amounts of raw data for super cheap. And then, whenever you need to, you can spin up these incredibly powerful computing resources to transform it on demand. It just became way cheaper, way faster, and way smarter to do the work right inside the warehouse. So, here's the key takeaway. This isn't just a story of old is bad and new is good. ELT is definitely the king of the hill today, for sure, but ETL absolutely still has its place. The choice between them is a strategic one, and it really depends on what you need. Let's put them head to head. With ETL, the work happens on a separate server, and you only load the clean stuff. This makes it a bit rigid, but it's like a fortress for compliance because sensitive data can be cleaned before it even touches the warehouse. ELT, on the other hand, works inside the warehouse, loads all the raw data, is super flexible, and it's built for the speed of modern analytics and machine learning. So when do you stick with ETL? Well, if you're in an industry with really strict rules, like finance or healthcare, it's often the best choice. If you absolutely have to scrub, anonymize, or remove sensitive information before it ever gets into your main system, ETL is your friend. Think about a bank needing to remove personal info to comply with laws like GDPR. They do that first.
And when is ELT the no-brainer? Pretty much any time you're using a modern cloud platform. If speed is your main goal, if you need flexibility for your data science teams, and if you want to keep all that raw data around, just in case you think of new questions to ask later, ELT is what you want. It's perfect for a startup that needs to build and change dashboards every single day. All right, we've covered the what, the why, and the when. So for our last section, let's just zoom out a bit and see how all of this fits into the bigger picture, what people call the modern data stack. Now, this might look a little technical, but the core idea here is really simple. The whole point is that modern tools are designed to work inside the cloud. Instead of having to pull data out, take it to a separate workshop to fix it, and then put it back, tools like Spark bring the workshop directly to the data. They leverage all that power of the cloud warehouse to get the job done faster and more efficiently. And here's the final dose of reality. This isn't some kind of religious war. It's about picking the right tool for the job. In fact, most of the smartest data teams out there actually use a hybrid approach. Think of it like a chef's kitchen. They use ELT to get all the raw ingredients delivered to their pantry super fast. Then, once everything's inside, they run smaller, more controlled ETL-like processes to prepare specific dishes, or in our case, perfectly clean data sets for different parts of the business. So what's next? Where is this all going? We're starting to hear new buzzwords like zero ETL, which promises to let us query data directly where it lives without moving it at all. So you have to wonder, is this whole idea of a data pipeline, this process of moving and transforming data, is it starting to disappear? Now that is a question that's going to define the next few years of data engineering.